Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Paramahansa, Parudikacharya, Ashtotar, the Sri Srimad, the Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Parudikacharya, Ashtotar, the Sri Srimad, the Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavini ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. So I think we're on 17. Any ideas? I don't know.
Oh, I think it is 18. 17 we finished last week.
Okay. You sure?
Yeah, it's on the. I'm tracking that shloka number.
You finished 17. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. So, what was I going to ask? Oh yeah, Dimitri. The mask. Yeah, you have to be strict. Okay. So, on this I know what I was going to do. It's too loud for Vijay. Thank you. On this 19th day of July 2021 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 13, entitled Nature, the Enjoyer in Consciousness, text number 18. Okay, text 18 on 549. Jyotisham apitad jyotis tamasa padam uchyate jnanam gyeyam jnanagamyam vidisarvasya vishtitam Jyotisam apitar jyotis tamasak paramuchyate Jnanam geyam jnanagamyam vidisarvasya vishtitam Jyotisam apitar jyotis tamasak paramuchyate Jnanam geyam jnanagamyam vidisarvasya vishtitam Jyotisam apitar jyotis tamasak paramuchyate Jnanam geyam jnanagamyam vidisarvasya vishtitam Jyotisam apitar jyotis tamasak paramuchyate Jnanam geyam jnanagamyam vidisarvasya vishtitam. Glenn. Jyotisam apitar jyotis tamasak paramuchyate Geyam jnanagamyam vidisarvasya vishtitam. Go ahead. Jyotisam apitar jyotis tamasak paramuchyate Jnanam geyam jnanagamyam vidisarvasya vishtitam. Anyone else? Jyotisam apitar jyotis tamasak paramuchyate Jnanam geyam jnanagamyam vidisarvasya vishtitam. Chris. Jyotisam apitar jyotis tamasak paramuchyate Jnanam geyam jnanagamyam vidisarvasya vishtitam. Just one note about that H with a dot under it, only at the end of the lines. If it's tamasa in the middle and you don't say aha, because that wrecks the meter. The tamasak paramuchyate. Okay? It sounds a little like a soft K in the middle of the line. At the end you can hit the aha like that. Okay. Okay. Word by words. Jyotisham in all luminous objects. Api also tat that. Jyotihi the source of light. Tamasaha the darkness. Padam beyond. At uchyate is said. Jnanam knowledge. Geyam to be known. Jnanagamyam to be approached by knowledge. Vidi in the heart. Sarvasya of everyone. Vishtitam situated. Translation. He is the source of light in all luminous objects. He is beyond the darkness of matter and is unmanifested. He is knowledge, he is the object of knowledge, and he is the goal of knowledge. He is situated in everyone's heart. Purport. The Super Soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the source of light in all luminous objects, like the sun, moon, and stars. In the Vedic literature, we find that in the spiritual kingdom there is no need of sun or moon, because the effulgence of the Supreme Lord is there. In the material world, that Brahma Jyoti, the Lord's spiritual effulgence, is covered by the Mahatattva, the material elements. Therefore, in this material world, we require the assistance of sun, moon, electricity, etc. for light. But in the spiritual world, there is no need of such things. It is clearly stated in the Vedic literature that because of his luminous effulgence, everything is illuminated. It is clear, therefore, that his situation is not in the material world. He is situated in the spiritual world, which is far, far away in the spiritual sky. That is also confirmed in the Vedic literature. Aditya Varnam Tamasak Parastat, Shvetashvatara Upanishad 3.8. He is just like the sun, eternally luminous, but he is far, far beyond the darkness of this material world. His knowledge is transcendental. The Vedic literature confirms that Brahman is concentrated transcendental knowledge. To one who is anxious to be transferred to that spiritual world, knowledge is given by the Supreme Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart. One Vedic mantra in the Shvetashvara Upanishad 6.18 says, Tam hadevam atma buddhi prakasham mumukshur vai sharanam aham prapadye. One must surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead if he at all wants liberation. As far as the goal of ultimate knowledge is concerned, it is also confirmed in Vedic literature, Tameva vidadvati mrityum eti. Only by knowing him can one surpass the boundary of birth and death. Shvetashvara Upanishad 3.8. He is situated in everyone's heart as the Supreme Controller. The Supreme has legs and hands distributed everywhere. And this cannot be said of the individual soul. Therefore, that there are two knowers of the field of activity, the individual soul and the supersoul, must be admitted. One's hands and legs are distributed locally, but Krishna's hands and legs are distributed everywhere. This is confirmed in the Shvetashvara Upanishad 3.17. Sarvasya prabhum ishanam sarvasya sharanam brihat. That Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supersoul, is the Prabhu, or Master, of all living entities. Therefore, he is the ultimate shelter of all living entities. So there is no denying the fact that the Supreme Supersoul and the individual soul are always different. Yeah, we have to close the door. There seems to be some crosstalk there. Hare Krishna. Om jnana timarandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshu unmilatam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So Krishna is still describing the object of knowledge, and here he adds this other word here, Gyanagamyam. We have Gyanam and Gayam. I think that was in the original question asked by Arjuna. Let's see. Yeah. Gyanam Gayam to Keshava. This is text 1. He wanted Prakritim Purusham Chaiva, Chaitram Chaitragimevaha, Etad Vedatam Ichami, Gyanam Gayam to Keshava. So this distinction between knowledge and the object of knowledge. Just like there's a chair there. So I have knowledge of the chair. And you could say that the object of that knowledge is the chair itself. But then you would say, well, what's the goal of knowing about the chair? You see what I'm saying? That's the Gyanagamyam. Who cares? Where am I going with this? That's like the Gyanagayam. You know what I'm saying? So we have the knowledge and the object of knowledge, and the Gyanagamyam, the final goal of the whole knowledge, is understanding the Supersoul and reestablishing relationship with Krishna as the Supersoul. So that's the end of the whole process. So that's added here in this important verse. And so Prabhupada, first of all, he very systematically goes through. The first line is all about the effulgence, about the Gyanagayam, the super soul, who is not different from Krishna, as the source of all light. We have in the Brahma Samhita a famous verse, Yasya prabha prabhavato jagadanda koti koti shrashesha fasodari vibhuti bhinnam tad brahma nishkalamanantam ashesha bhutam govindamadi purushantam aham. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose prabha is the effulgence. Prabhavato jagadanda koti is that Brahman effulgence is the ultimate source of all of the manifestations of planets and universes and things. That's what this verse says, with all of their different varieties. Plus, it's the source of all illumination. We have this artificial light here, but ultimately, you can analyze in one sense. Well, it's all coming from the sun, because what are they doing? We're still burning fossil fuels, right? Oh no, actually, this is from sunlight. We have ours. They call it the solar system. I said, can we have another term for that? Solar system is already taken, right? Anyway, it's a joke. It's a solar system. We have plates up on the roof catching the sunlight. I don't know if you know that. To save money. And it's been installed for at least a year now. So it's directly from the sun. Otherwise, it's stored energy from the sun. They're burning fossil fuels. Or what does that mean? That's sun energy has been stored in the plants. They died. They turned into coal or gas or oil or something like that. It's still the same as sun energy. So the illumination is coming from the sun. The heat is coming from the sun. And in our understanding, but according to the Vedas, all the planets and everything are being supported by the sun. So that's Vriddhi Sarvasya Vishitam. That same super soul who's present in everyone's heart, Vriddhi means heart, is also ultimately Krishna, whose effulgence is producing all of this light that we see. That's why Krishna says in the spiritual world, what does it say? I forget now. I'm forgetting these verses. But there's no need for sunlight, there's no need for moonlight or electricity in the spiritual world. Once going there, you don't return. Everything's self-effulgent. The living entities are self-effulgent, you see. So that's, here everything is dark, and we require this kind of light. We require the sun, the moon, something, fire, to heat it, to illuminate it. But you imagine in a world where every living entity is self-luminous. Chidananda Jyoti Padamapitadasvajamapicha. This is a line from Brahma Samhita. That in that spiritual world, it's a very nice verse because it describes the attractive features of Goloka Vrindavan. First of all, Shriya Kanta Padamapurusha Kalpatadavo Druma. He says that there all of the beloveds of Krishna are goddesses of fortune, and Krishna is the hero and the lover of all of them. Kanta Padamapurusha, the supreme person. Kalpatadavo Druma. The trees are all desire trees. The water is all nectar. There's no walking. You're going to have to learn to dance there. You learn to dance here, or you're going to have to learn to dance when you go back to the spiritual. And there, you don't get tired. That was quite a kirtan this morning. That was a real classic. That was like the old days. Full on. I wanted to show it to Maharaj. I thought maybe they had it on YouTube. They have a few seconds of it, but mostly they're showing the deities. Everyone's jumping up and down and they're showing the deities, It's nectar, but it's...
So that verse is Nacha Devasate Suryo Nasha Shanko Na Pavaka Yadgatva.
How's it start?
Nacha Devasate Suryo Nasha Shanko.
Thank you, that was nice. Natad Vasiyate Suryo Nasha Shanko Na Pavaka.
15.6.
Yes. So, then, and importantly, one who goes there doesn't have to come back. So you go to the heavenly planets, and you have to come back. Wherever you go, you have to come back. If you go to hell, you're lucky. Oh, I'll come back to this plane. But you go to heaven, you still got to come back. Krishna says, "Chine punye matya lokam vishanti." Once your punya credits are used up, down you come. And he doesn't mince any words. It's martya lokam, the world of death. But once you go back to the spiritual world, there's no return. You return back home, back to God. Why would you come back here? You don't have any desire to. Once burned, twice shy, is a saying in English. So the super soul is the source of all the light. I explained that. His knowledge is transcendental. Excuse me. Brahman is concentrated transcendental knowledge. That's why we have this verse near the beginning of the Bhagavatam. Vadanti tatvavadam tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdite. Important verse defining the three stages, basic stages of understanding the absolute truth according to the means of approach. If you don't want any personal relationship with God, but you still want to transcend this world of birth and death, then you become an impersonalist. You just want to know, aham brahmasmi, tattvamasi, you're that, you're that, you're that, you're that, you're all the same, one. All of these varieties are just Maya, that's Maya bodies. So, because we have bitter experience that these material relationships, beginning with our relationship with this body, is a source of misery. What to speak of relationship with other bodies, you see? It's all a source of misery. You may establish a loving relationship, but that has to break. And eventually there's an adversarial relationship, which is a source of pain and suffering. And after it's all done and gone, then you have to leave the body and start another relationship with another body. So having a body, having a personality, all of these things, this is all a source of suffering. They fail to see that there's something as a spiritual body, that the absolute truth has a form and pastimes and qualities and name, and that it's all pure. It's not contaminating, it's not frustrating, it's not a source of misery. So this is the problem with the impersonalist view. But still, there's a realization, Brahman. Brahman means the greatest thing, all-pervading, all luminous, the source of everything. See? Atato Brahma Jigyasa. But that is not fulfilling for the soul, because we are by nature persons. We're part and parcel of the Supreme. Means that we have qualities of Krishna in minute degree. He's a person, we're persons. He has activities, we have activities. He has senses, we have senses. But the problem is that we're very minute, infinitesimal. Even though we have that quality, we can be covered over. And that's why when Sanatana Goswami, he asked Lord Chaitanya, who am I? Why am I suffering? If I don't understand the answer to these questions, what's the use of all my erudition and learning? You see, I don't know anything. He was very, very wise. He knew many different languages. He had a very high position in the government before. But he said, it's all useless. And I don't even know how to ask the question, so please instruct me. Just enlighten me. So he answered the first question. What is our swarup? Swarup means our real nature, not these artificial designations, upadis. This word, you should know this word. Upadi means a designation that is artificially upon you, such as male, female, old, young, your place of birth. All of these things are what may identify you in the material world, but it has nothing at all to do with your actual nature. It's not your swarup. The swarup is your actual root that doesn't change, your original form. We all have original form in the spiritual world, and discovering that and acting in that according to that form in relation with Krishna is the goal of our whole process of learning it and gradually developing, purifying our senses of all of these misconceptions. So the first understanding is Brahman. That's why Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavantiti Shabdite. But the reason I quoted the verse, because he calls it Advaya Gyan, is a non-dual knowledge. So this acquirement of knowledge is very important. That's why the classes are there, the books are there, and regular study is essential to found your faith in real substantial knowledge, so that when you encounter difficulties, you'll fall back on the knowledge and say, okay, this is a temporary thing, and I have to work through it. Otherwise, your faith is called komala shraddha. Komala means very pliable. It can easily be swept away. And so that's one of the reasons we need to be careful of who we associate with. Lord Chaitanya was asked, how do I recognize a Vaishnav? This is one of his devotees came up from Bengal, and they were with him in Jagannath Puri during the Rath Yatra time. They would spend 4 months there with him every year for 20 years. They kept coming. So one time they asked, well, how do I recognize the Vaishnav? What's the Asat Sangha Tyaga E Vaishnava Acha Stri Sangha Ekasaru Krishna Bhakta Ar. The first thing is you can see Asat Sangha Tyaga is that the Vaishnavas, they give up all of the Asat Sangha. Well, what does that mean? So he compresses it into two little phrases. Stri Sangi Eka Asaru Krishna Abhakta Ar. Krishna Abhakta, not Krishna Bhakta, but Abhakta, just the opposite. I'm sorry? Yes, asadhu. These are non-sadhus who we have to avoid. So Stri Sangi means those who are too attached to association with women. But it's kind of a code word. It means any kind of sense gratification, which begins with sex desire, sex life, So those people who are, always talking about the opposite sex and planning and parties and this and that, you don't want to associate them. You may have done that before, but don't do it anymore if you want to purify your consciousness, And it's that sangha is everywhere, so that's why we have to be careful. And then Krishna Abhakta, this refers to the Mayavadis. Those who are not Strisangi, they understand the need for renunciation, but they deny the personality of Godhead, the impersonalists. And there's an important distinction to be made here. There's Brahmavadis and there's Mayavadis. The word Vadi means someone who espouses a philosophy. Like the Mayavadis, they espouse Mayavad philosophy. Vad means to speak. In the old days, everything was speaking. Books were very uncommon, very rare. You have to, copy by hand on the palm leaves, So the books were very rare. Everything was by hearing and remembering. The minds were much sharper, calmer. So, Krishna Abhakta. So you have the Brahmavadis, and they're reformable, meaning that they're not offenders. And some famous Brahmavadis who became pure devotees, great devotees, Shukadev Goswami, and the four Kumaras. You've heard of them, right? So, the four Kumaras, they're personifications of Gyan, knowledge, Jnana Shakti. They're Shaktiavesh. Shaktiavesh means empowered by Krishna. They're given special powers. And they have this vast knowledge, even though they look like little 6-year-old boys. You know the story of why they're 6-year-old boys? This is new for many of you, So, Lord Brahma, he has the first I don't know how many thousands of years he meditated on that lotus flower that he appeared on, because he had instruction from Krishna. The instruction tapa. Just imagine you wake up, and you're not like a little baby or something. You're fully awake, but you're all alone on this lotus flower, and everything is dark. What the heck? Who am I? Where did I come from? So what did he have to do? All he had to do was, the only thing he had to work with was the lotus flower. So I better go down that lotus stem and see what I can find. You see? He's investigating. This is the ascending process. He's ascending process by descending into the lotus. So he goes down, 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 down. But he wasn't qualified to understand Vishnu, who's at the bottom of that lotus, Garbhadaksha Vishnu. So he couldn't make any real headway. He just was frustrated. So he comes back up on the lotus and he sits and waits. And then Krishna, who he couldn't see, he hears these 2 syllables. Tapa, I think 3 times. Tapa, tapa. And he's so smart, he's got 4 heads, that he knows what that means. It means, okay, this means I have to perform austerity. So he starts meditating. Just meditating, waiting. And eventually Krishna reveals within the heart, the Gayatri mantra, the flute, he gets revelation. He sings the Brahma Samhita. First verse, of the 5th chapter anyway. Ishwarak Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Nadidadi Govinda Savakarana Karanam. Very important verse. It defines Lord Brahma's understanding, and he's the head of our Sampradaya, don't forget. We're in the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. Means that Brahma, we're reading every morning how his word changes everything, right? Swayambhu Manu couldn't convince Priyavrata to take up the duty. Narada was sitting there, he was convincing in the opposite way. But Brahma comes down and resolves everything. We've heard his instructions. And the way he resolved it was by assuring him that, don't worry, you're so advanced, you go into and perform the duty, you'll know it's authorized because Krishna wants you to do it. Someone's got to run the universe. And so you're it. And so you take up that and you'll be able to remain Krishna conscious even while doing all this complicated duties. And so everyone accepts Brahma as he's after all Narada Muni's spiritual master and his father, right? and so Priyavrata takes up the role. So, but at the beginning, Brahma didn't know anything, and then he was enlightened, spoke the Brahma Samhita, and one of the verses is very pertinent. I think we chanted already. Yasya Prabhava Vato Jagadanda Koti. He's describing there the Brahman effulgence. That it comes from Govinda. Everything ends with Govinda Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is the source of the Durga, her management, of this universe, all of the complicated things. She's just acting according to his desire, like a shadow. And in terms of the Vishnus, Mahavishnu and the Abhidakshi Vishnu, they're expansions. Everything goes back to Govinda, you see. So, Brahma was enlightened, and he became fully, this is a line from the Brahma Samhita, he became fully acquainted with the ocean of truth, and he understood his own relationship with Krishna. Everything was revealed to him. Personalism. So, the Brahmavadis, so these, when Brahma, so then when he finally sits down, okay, now it's time to do his duty, which is to populate the universe. Because all of these souls have to be given back their bodies. At the previous annihilation, we want to go back to Godhead soon. This birth or maybe next birth at the latest, because we don't want to stay entangled in this world. Because if we're here when the annihilation comes, then we just get merged into the body of Mahavishnu, and we're completely unconscious for a lifetime of Brahma, which is a night of Brahma. No, a lifetime of Brahma, which is 311 trillion 40 billion years. So that's what happens if you procrastinate in Krishna consciousness. So we want to go back this birth or as soon as possible. So he had to populate the universe. So he meditates, and what does he got to work with? Basically his own mind. So from his mind is coming the Kumaras, these 4 children, and he wants them to be Prajapatis. Means to get married and have many children and start, letting these souls who are waiting to take their bodies start to take and populate the universe. So they don't want to have any part of it. They say, no, we're not going to get entangled like that. By our Tejas, we're going to stay 6-year-old boys. That's the origin of that song. You may have heard of that? This is, I won't grow up, I won't grow up. Did you ever hear that? That's from, what is that? I forgot, there was a famous cartoon. Anyway, that's a long time. But they actually were able to do that, even though they're super knowledgeable. But they look like 6-year-olds. So this is what Brahma had to take on a headache of trying to get, so that they became angry, and from the middle, when you get angry, from the middle of his forehead came Lord Shiva. And anyway, it's a long story. I won't explain it. But eventually everything was manifested. Obviously, that's why we're here. So the first stage is, so these Kumaras, their preference was to meditate on the impersonal. They were much more inclined to that. They weren't offensive, they weren't denying the existence of God, but they preferred the impersonal. And then they changed. Remember how they changed? They went up to Vaikuntha, and they wanted to see Vishnu. But Jai and Vijay, they stopped them. Now, there's all kind of debate whether, ultimately it was Vishnu's arrangement, so they would come down and become Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, so that Krishna could fight and Narasingha could, manifest. It's a long story. But they weren't really bhaktas yet. And so they became very angry. Oh, you won't let me in? You won't let me into the gate? We're the Kumaras. So he cursed them. He cursed them to become demons and fall down. And so meanwhile, Vishnu hears the commotion at the gate, and he comes walking there, and when he approaches, the breeze blows over his feet, lotus feet, and carries the fragrance of tulsi manjaris. We call them manjaris, the little flowers. They have a unique fragrance, So it's described in the Bhagavatam, 3rd canto. When that fragrance entered their nostrils, they underwent a transformation, and they became devotees. And they became very sorry that they cursed these bhaktas. These are Vaishnavas, and they have all these prayers to Vishnu, and he assured them, don't worry, it's my ultimate plan, so I can come down and manifest like that, But that's when they became full-on bhaktas. Now, Shukadev was the other most famous one. He also didn't want to get entangled. It was just like the Kumaras. And his strategy was to stay in the womb. How long was it, 16 years? I don't even want to think of what the lady was going through. But he stayed inside the womb and wouldn't take birth. Finally, Krishna came all the way from Dwarka to convince him while he's in the womb. You come out, you'll be okay, you won't get entangled. So he said, okay. So he comes out, immediately takes sannyas. He's 16 years old. So he takes sannyas, and his father wants to teach him the Bhagavatam, and he's running after him, and he's walking into the forest. There's a scene in the 1st canto like that. All naked. So he was Atma Rama. Atma Rama, simply satisfied with spirit. Atmaramascha. There's a famous verse. This is a really important verse. Atmaramascha muniyo nirgranta apurukvame kurvancha hoitakim bhaktim ittam bhuta guno hari. Now this is a really, Lord Chaitanya loved this verse. He explained it in 61 ways, so 62 ways to Sanatana Goswami. Because each word can mean so many different things. And when you combine it with all the other words, you get many different meanings. But the basic meaning is important for us also. And Shukadev explained it about himself. And that is that those who are Atmarama, I mean, they're completely satisfied just in understanding their pure spirit. In Brahmavad, there's a certain Brahmananda, a bliss of just being completely on the spiritual platform. So this is called Atmaramascha Muniyo. Even though the great learned devotees or learned sages may be Atmarama, Nirgranta, no knots. A granta is a knot. It can also mean a shastra, But the knots in the heart of all of the desires we've been built up over many, many years, lifetimes that are unfulfilled, that keep us bound to this world. So he said, Nirgranta, no knots. They don't have any material desires. They're satisfied just understanding I am aham brahmasmi, om, om, om. But even they, see, here's the key point here. Kurvanti ahaidukim bhaktim ettam bhuta guno hari. When they hear about Hari's wonderful qualities, which includes the name, form, quality, pastimes, you see, they're so wonderful that they also want to come out of that Brahmananda platform, and they want to perform devotional service to the lotus feet of the Lord. So it's a higher platform. The Lord Chaitanya, he converted several famous Mayavadis, Prakashananda Saraswati, all of his thousands of disciples all surrendered in Benares, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. They were both very, very learned in Mayavad philosophy, Vedanta. It was very intellectual. You have to really study hard. So they were expert in that. But Lord Chaitanya converted them both. He explained Vedanta as Bhakti Vedanta. And the ultimate goal of the knowledge is Bhakti, not just Brahman, you see. So that's the idea, is that Brahman is the first stage. Then you get to the super soul, which we're hearing about now. Brahma, Paramatma, the supreme soul, and Bhagavan. Bhagavan includes all the other realizations. You get Bhagavan, and you're going to know about the Brahma Jyoti, and you'll know about the super soul we're hearing right now. So those who worship the super soul, the yogis generally, their goal, is they all have goals. In other words, they have something desired. The Brahmavadis, Mayavadis, they want liberation. They want liberation, from birth and death. I want. The yogis, they generally get off into the siddhis, to develop these siddhis. You can imagine, we're sitting here right now. One of the siddhis is Prapti Siddhi. You know what that is. You reach out your hand, you can get anything you want. You don't have to write into Amazon, you have to pay, your bank account goes down. You just want to. Prabhupada said that one of his teachers had a yoga teacher who was a accomplished siddhi yogi. So he was teaching him. He came to his home or something. And maybe, I forget if he was a child at the time or not, but anyway, the teacher who told Prabhupada the story, he said, what do you want? You can have whatever you like. He said, okay, give me some pomegranates from Kandahar, from Afghanistan, a note to make very nice pomegranates. So he says, okay, look in the next room. He opens the room, and on the bed there is this freshly broken branch with a bunch of ripe pomegranates on it. He was able to get that pomegranate. Sounds amazing, huh? The British, Prabhupada, he tells this story. Because one of the cities is to be smaller than the smallest, to really be able to shrink down, So he says, the British came and they ruled India, So they tried to impose what they felt was Christian morality and everything. So you're in Delhi, you're near the Himalayas, so the yogis would come down sometimes. And they would walk around naked. Well, you can't be doing that. You can do it in London, you can't do it here. So they arrested the yogi, and put him in jail. Next day, he's out on the street. How'd he get out? They put him again, and next he's on the street. He could shrink down and he can go through the keyhole. It's for real. Prabhupada himself, he lived in Allahabad for 13 years. I think that's the place he lived longest after his home in Calcutta. And that's Prayag. That's where the Trivenis come in. Triveni. That's where they have the Kumbh Mela and the Magh Mela, and So he saw a couple of those in that time. Every 12 years they have a really big one. So he went, and he saw, and to this day you can see them. Yogis come down from the Himalayas, and I saw a photograph. Wikipedia, you can find all naked sadhus, covered with ash. Many of them, but they're naked. And some of them look young, some of them look a little older. And Prabhupada said they may look, 35, but someone said he's actually 300 years old. He's actually 400 years old. I mean, if you can get through the keyhole, but you get to believe these. So, because what you do is you slow down the breathing. You breathe very, very slowly. You just barely. There's all of these techniques. So the point is that you can imagine how attractive these things can get. You're working and you're meditating and everything, then you can do astral travel, you can fly everywhere, you can read minds, you can walk on water. So the next idea that may come, hey, let me go to the West, let me monetize all this, That's how you get guys coming in. But it's far from bhakti. So Lord Chaitanya says, who's really peaceful? And we heard this, was it this morning? I forgot. Yeah, I think Rajendananda quoted it. Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ataeva Shanta. Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakali Ashanta. So there's basically 4 categories of human beings. There's the karmis, ordinary karma, fruitive actors, which is the vast, vast majority. And then there's the yogis, the muktivads, those who are after mukti, and there's the bhaktas. So you have those 4 categories. So who's actually peaceful? So he gives the 4. First he says, Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ateva Shanta. This is right in the Gita. Where's peace? If you read the 2nd chapter, there's a lot about peace. So he sums it all up in one verse near the end. Vihaya kama nyaksavan pumam chadati nikspaha. Niyamamo nadahankara sashantim adigachati. One who gives up all material desire. Vihaya kama nyaksavan. And he lives free of material desires. And he also has no sense of proprietorship and no false ego. And nadahankara. That person is peaceful. Well, how can you possibly get that quality? By being a devotee. You can't artificially develop those. So, Krishna Bhakta Nishkama, because the pure devotee has absolutely no material desire. There's one verse I've been working on lately because where did I hear it? I think it came up with one of Rajendananda's Raj's classes or Vaisheshika classes. There's a description of the pure devotees in the 11th canto. The different levels of devotees. How do you recognize who's Uttama Adhikari, Madhyama Adhikari, and Kanishta Adhikari, the lowest? So he gives one verse defining those each, and then he gives 6 or 7 verses about the Uttama Adhikari, and the last 3 are really far out, and they deal with the same subject of desirelessness, because all of your desires are fulfilled in devotional service. This is the point. Is that serving Krishna's lotus feet purely is so fulfilling that you don't want anything else. There's several times in the Bhagavatam it says those who they don't want the position of Brahma, they don't want to rule this earth, they don't want to rule in other words, all the common things that people may desire, nothing at all. Just let me continue. So these beautiful verses describe this. So first he says. Tribhavana vibhavahet be, it's really jazzy. Tribhavana vibhavahet be pakundas mitadajita masodari be vimrigyat. Nachalati bhagavat pradada vinda lavanimashada babiyaksta Vaishnav agriha. Agriha means the foremost of devotees of Vaishnav. So he says that Tribhavana vibhavahet be, all of the opulences, the attractive things in all 3 worlds, for the sake of them, Akunta Smita, those who have unbroken remembrance of Krishna's lotus feet by their ardent devotion. This unbroken remembrance is a major goal. That's why we should really concentrate. The first thing when we chant our rounds is to hear every syllable. Besides anything else, that's the first thing. Really hear and concentrate. When the mind wants, bring it back, So, he's meditating on those lotus feet, which are aspired for by all of the demigods and all the others, those lotus feet of Krishna. So the greatest devotees, they have unbroken remembrance of those lotus feet because they're pure. So that unbroken remembrance, for the sake of all the opulences in all three worlds, they would not agree to forget those lotus feet even for a split second. One may say, I'll just forget for 1 second and then come back, and I'll use all that Lakshmi to build 100 temples for Krishna. Said, no, I'm so attracted to that. Nachadati Bhagavad Pada, lava nimishara, half of a second they wouldn't agree. And then what's the result? Well, the second verse describes what the result of that remembrance is. Bhagavata udavikramang vishaka nakamani chandrakaya narastatape. So by meditating on those lotus feet have these toenails, and those toenails are like moons, giving off this wonderful soothing effulgence, which completely eradicates any kind of misery in the heart. So they're completely free of misery, even in this material world. Nakamani chandrakaya nirastatape. It completely eradicates all tapa, which means material miseries. Really katamupasiddhatam. Those who are worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord in that way, how can there possibly arise any kind of pain or suffering? It's just like you're in a desert. There are there's heat waves now, crazy heat waves. We're very fortunate here, cooler. But then you're in the desert. Somehow you survive, and then at night the moon comes up and gives you, this nice cooling breeze. The temperature is down, and you get the soothing of the moon. So they're constantly experiencing that soothing, wonderful nectar effulgence of Krishna's toenails, and it just eradicates any kind of misery. And then the next verse, the last verse, gives Krishna's response to this. So it says, Visrajati vidiham nayasya sakshad hadada bashab hitau bigaganasha paniya vishaniya tudang vipadma sabhavati bhagavata pradhana ukta. So he says, how could Krishna ever give up the heart of such a devotee? In other words, he's not going to leave. I mean, he's so merciful that even if someone indifferently and by accident chants his name, he eradicates whole lifetimes of sinful reactions. People we're suffering constantly for all of these things we don't remember that we've done, but they're impinging on our consciousness, impinging on our, making our destiny. So all of that gets eradicated for someone who indifferently chants. What to speak of the pure devotee who is always serving and always remembering. So Krishna is bound, his lotus feet are bound to the heart of that devotee by the ropes of love. Pranaya Vashaniya. Vashaniya means ropes. Such a devotee is the highest devotee. So that's the ultimate end of it all, is that beyond all of this desire for liberation, oh boy, great, no more birth, death, old age, and disease. Oh, let me get those powers, now I can. It's completely, bhakti completely negates all that. So that's what we're after, and part of it is understanding the super soul. All right, I've taken all the time practically. Danavar, you have a question? Vijay Krishna, you there? Not tonight.
No, Prabhu, I don't have any question. You covered so much. Very nice class. Thank you. And
all right, we have a local question here, Danavar. Thank you. Go ahead, Prabhu.
Prabhu, to contrast with today morning's class where Brahma approaches Priyavata to take up service.
I'm sorry?
Like compared to the Kumaras, the 4 Kumaras, like since they were Brahmavadis, they refused to take up service, versus Priyavrata, who was also approached by Brahma to take up service.
Who took up the service?
Yeah, like he was a bhakta.
Well, what happened was that Brahma started to create various beings from his mind. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a smooth operation. Those who read the Bhagavatam, there's some demons came and they were running after him to have sex, homosex, and so he had to cast off that body. Yeah, it's right there in the Bhagavatam. And so he cast off that body, Okay, that didn't work. Then he himself was attracted to his daughter. That was a problem, and those who he'd already created were critical. It was not a smooth transition. And then gradually, like we're reading about Swayambhuva Manu and others, Kardama Muni. Some were the great sages. They became the Prajapatis, and so they've come down, since then. But and even Daksha, he got into trouble. He became proud of his prowess. He insulted Shiva, so that became problematic. When you get into the material side of things, you will see with Priyavrata, there's all kinds of problems that arrive. Even you try to manage a temple in the material world, there's all kinds of challenges that come up. And because it's the material world is a place of irregularity and challenges and things like that. But he succeeded, of course. He did his duty, and things have been populated. All right, let me do one more. No, don't have time. So, okay, I'm sorry it took so long on that, but we'll be able to continue tomorrow. But we do have time for a poem or two. So, this one it describes, is from the Prajabali. And like many of these, I think it's anonymous. At least I forget who wrote it. Many of these are anonymous. But he says, Aho beer, nakale viduyate, sudha sudara modadam pade pade. Dine dine chandana chandra shitalam yasho yashodatana yasagiyate. Now, it's especially pertinent now because the global warming is coming on strong. These heat waves and all of this stuff that's going on. So this is the days of the Kali Yuga. It's like a big forest fire. So this verse is about that. How can we become cool and stay cool even in the forest fire? So he says, because at every step they taste a flood of wondrous nectar sweet, whose cooling power sandal paste enhanced with camphor can't defeat. Now I have to stop this. You may not know the culture, but sandalwood paste is very cooling. When it gets hot, we've still been kind of cool. You'll see every morning we put a little on Prabhupada because from the deities they put, and cooling. Here is where it's. So sandal paste is cooling, and you add a little camphor, it becomes even cooler. Yeah, not the camphor for anti-moths. This is a special camphor. Ground up very carefully. So that's a cooling effect. So this one says, because at every step they taste a flood of wondrous nectar sweet, whose cooling power sandal paste enhanced with camphor can't defeat. They feel as if the raging blaze of Kali's days had ne'er begun. How blessed are they who fill their days with praise of Shri Yashoda's son. So this is what we're meant to do, to fill our days with praise of Yashodanandana, Krishna, the son of Yashoda. And that's what we're being trained to do. And, Lord Chaitanya has made it so easy. Just chant Hare Krishna. Keep chanting. Don't stop. Tirtaniya Sada Hari. That's always available. But then it expands into the whole Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. There's so much other subject matter for hearing and chanting about Krishna. So when that's our focus and that's the center of our consciousness, we'll find we can tolerate so many things. People insult us. Okay, Hare Krishna. So many different things. And that's one of my favorites, a whole beer, Nakaleva Duyate. All right, one more. Okay, this is a prayer to Srila Prabhupada. It's very good, especially those who are involved with book distribution or book production. This is which you all are one way or another. He says, O Prabhupada, we hail the day when you appear just like a ray of Krishna's vast effulgence bright to give this blind world back its sight. We thank you from the bottom of our heart and pray with deepest love that we may serve your lotus feet in every circumstance we meet. As years go by and books go out, we see what life is all about, to serve your mission and our Lord's by spreading wide your sacred words. As well, you want us all to strive to let those words direct our lives. This safest path will lead us home, no more in Maya's realm to roam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you so much, Hare Krishna. Very nice class.
Hari Bol, Danabai. And all you others who may be listening in, the silent majority.
Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.